Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison in Cork, Ireland. Ned?
Thank you, Steve. I'm an epic marathon swimmer and the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. And I've got another marathon swimmer on the line today. Anthony, will you help everybody by introducing yourself? Make it at least 5 times longer than my introduction.
Sure. You know, I'll start with, I'm not the caliber swimmer as many of your guests and as you two guys are. I really, I think of myself as an abalone diver who swims more than I really think of myself as a swimmer. I don't think of myself as being good enough to be called a swimmer. I didn't even learn how to swim until I was 13 years old. My first open water swim actually happened though when I was 16. I was a pool lifeguard in Pacifica, California. My boss was a guy who belonged to the Dolphin Club, a guy who his name was Lou Zitnick. And one day he says, "Hey, come down to the Dolphin Club, let's go swim in the bay." And like a silly 16-year-old, I went and I did it. And it was surprisingly different than I expected. I thought the cold would be painful, but I didn't understand that it was going to feel like it was going to burn my skin off. So that's what it felt like. I felt like I was burning my skin off. And like a fool 16-year-old kid, I went back, and then I went back, and the people at the Dolphin Club were so nice. A couple of weeks later, they were having a swim from Alcatraz. So actually, my fourth open water swim, I was 16 years old, and I swam from Alcatraz to shore. But from the time, even before I knew how to swim, I had this little, I don't know how old I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I really wanted to swim the English Channel. I just really had a burning desire to do it. It never left me, even in adulthood. And so one day I was living in Philadelphia, woke up, I was living in Philadelphia, and I was like, holy moly, I'm a couple of months from being 50 years old. I'm running out of time. I better get to it. And so I got to it. It took me 3 years, 2 tries. It took me 3 years and 2 tries, but I did the English Channel. And really, everything else since then has just been gravy. It's been bonus material. It's been whatever. It's been wonderful. But the people in the sport make it very addictive, but it's a very addictive emotional experience too, to do big giant swims. And so I've gone on and done a few other things. I did Cook Strait, I've done Tahoe. My most recent swim was late last year. I swam in Brazil, Leme de Pontal in Brazil, and that was an amazing swim. So that's kind of the background.
Do you know why you had this English Channel thing in your head? Any
No,
idea why?
I really don't. It was one of those things where I don't know if it's a bedtime story my parents read to me. I don't know if it's something I heard on the news as a kid, some newspaper article about somebody who had done it. I just really don't know. But it was one of those things that just never left me. And I wasn't doing marathon swims at all. The longest swim I'd ever done was a 2-miler swim in the San Francisco Bay when I was like 22 or something. And so to wake up when I'm almost 50, it was just like, wow, this is a big challenge. I'm going to go do it. Yeah, but because I was an abalone diver, and I don't know, Ned, if you know what abalone diving is, but it's the fine art of holding your breath in black, murky water and going down to the bottom to find big, giant snails and pry them off and bring them to the surface. And so I'm extremely comfortable in the ocean. So even though I was living in Philadelphia, being used to the ocean wasn't an issue. It was just really the distance was really the big challenge for me. But it never left. And like I said, I woke up, I was 50 years old, and I was just like, I'm running out of time. I better do this now. This is a dream I don't want to give up on. I mean, Ned, I don't know what your life is like, but we all have things in our lives that we've had to give up along the way, from our youthful goals and ambitions to reality of what life brings to us. And that was just one thing I didn't want to give up on, so I did it.
So you've now completed what's called the Grand Slam, which all compliments to Ron Collins, who tagged Tampa Bay onto the Triple Crown. Fabulous marketing run. Which of those swims was the toughest for you?
Well, I just got through. So Tampa Bay was really hard because it was my second marathon swim ever, Tampa Bay. I had done just the year before, I had done Key West, and the water was 90, the air was 90, the humidity was 90%. And I literally almost died. It was Key West, it was an absolute disaster. I was emotionally destroyed after that because I got to shore in Key West. I thought I was sitting on the beach for 10 minutes, and I was there for an hour and a half. I didn't know. I was experiencing all kind of pain in my gut and all that kind of stuff. And it was just, Key West was just absolutely brutal. And unfortunately, I mean, part of my ignorance, right? I just didn't even know what I was doing, is I didn't know the heat could be a threat the way the cold was. I was focused on going from the English Channel. So thinking of the heat as a threat didn't even cross my mind. And I didn't know what to do. So if 12 and a half miles was a disaster, how was I ever going to go swim the 20.7 miles of the English Channel? And so I was in a funk, and quite candidly, it's a very sad story, but 4 months after my Key West swim, Fran Crippen died. And that's when I realized that heat was a real danger. And I really didn't know that. When I read about what happened with him, I realized myself how close I was to death. I had a lot of the same symptoms that he must have experienced. And anyway, so Tampa Bay was scary because of that, because I knew it was another warm water. It wasn't going to be as hot as Key West, but I knew it was going to be another warm water swim. But I was going double the distance of a swim that I barely finished. And so it was threatening that way. And it was a great learning experience. It was a good day. It was a good learning experience. Ron does a great job with that swim. And then, Manhattan is, Ron says all the time, he says all the time that a stick could swim Manhattan, because you get pushed up the East River, the Harlem's a little slack, and then you get to float down the Hudson. That's what he says. It was a little harder for me than that, but that's what Ron says all the time. So it wasn't that bad of a swim. Catalina was a challenge because at hour 7, my crew told me I was on pace to finish at 10 hours. And what happened is about 2 seconds later, a current came shooting straight off the shore that they hadn't seen in a long time. And it took me 13 hours instead of 10 hours. So doubled the amount of time at the end of the swim. So that was really a challenge as well. But the English Channel was the hardest one. It took me 2 attempts. The first time I was ordered out of the water half mile from shore. So it was emotionally gut-wrenching for a long time. I thought it was one of the worst days of my life when I was ordered out of the water. But it was the hardest. By far, the English Channel was the hardest because it was so emotionally important.
Yeah, this comment about the stick. It's common language that if you throw an empty Coke bottle into the English Channel in Dover, it will eventually get to France. Might take it 35 years. So I kind of discount that kind of thing. So you went from this Triple Crown and the English Channel in your mind as a kid, and you end up doing the California Triple Crown, which wasn't around when you were a kid, so you don't have that excuse. What possessed you? How did it come about? And again, the question, which of those was the toughest?
Well, I already tell you the Catalina story. And then Anacapa was my Santa Barbara Channel swim. I did Anacapa, and that was just more, it sounded like an interesting swim, to tell you the truth. It just, it just sounded like a really interesting swim. And I just got a glorious day in Anacapa. It was just, the water was so clear, it was like looking through air. I mean, I've never seen water in the Caribbean, in Hawaii, anywhere as clear as that water was, about a mile or so off of Anacapa. It was just unbelievable. And in fact, about a mile off, just as the sun was coming up, there was 2 juvenile sea lions that decided to start messing with me. And they were like 50 feet down below me, and they came shooting up, and they came right up to me about 5 feet and then turned away. And it felt like it was that picture of Jaws, where the shark's coming up, grabbing that female swimmer. It felt like that. And they did like 6 or 7 times, going all the way back down, coming back up as fast as they could, shooting up. And I could just see the whole thing, right? And it was just like, whoa. And finally, and I didn't want, I stopped breathing because I was trying to keep an eye on them while they were doing this and all this stuff. And finally, I popped up and they kind of swam off. And Dan Simonelli was my kayaker. And I look over at him and he's just cracking up because the water was so clear from the kayak, he could see the whole thing. So Anacapa was just gorgeous. Pi was by far the hardest. First of all, because I was 5 years older, and I'm old enough that 5 years makes a big difference right now. But the altitude is a killer there, and there's 2 schools of thought around the altitude that I had heard. One was you go up there weeks ahead of time, and so you get used to it, and then you go swim, and you're fine. The other one is you just show up and go. Before you get depleted, you just start swimming before you go. Because my work schedule and all that stuff, I decided to go the second route. Plus, right, because I'm originally from California, I've been to Tahoe a lot. I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought I'd be fine with the altitude. I've done the Trans Tahoe relay, back in the early 90s, early 90s, all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, oh, that's no big deal. I'll be able to handle it if I just show up and go. Well, I'm driving up to Lake Tahoe, and I'm like, wow, it's been 22 years since I've been to Lake Tahoe. And, you're driving alone, so I'm still thinking, and then it hits me, it's like, wait a second, it's been 22 years since I've been at high altitude. And then, so Tom Lincecum, who runs the show for Tahoe, he has you swim at night. So you start just as the sun goes down. So you swim through the night, so you're not getting the afternoon chop and swells by the time you finish. But so I got in the water, I swam, it was just crystal clear. The sun was setting down over the mountain, and in about 8-9 feet of water, about 20 yards offshore, I saw an iPhone on the bottom of the lake, right? It's only 8 feet, no big deal. I'm an old abalone diver, right? I'm used to 35 feet, it's not a big deal. And so I didn't even take a breath. I just dive down, grab the phone, come up, and I'm ready to end the swim because I can't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. And it was just absolutely shocking to me how hard it was. And it took me hours. I mean, probably took me 10 hours to catch my breath again. I normally bilateral breathe. I couldn't bilateral breathe in Tahoe, so I was breathing off of one side the whole time. So my shoulder was killing me by the time I was done. So Tahoe was by far the hardest. And in fact, the two people there were my crew, Susie Dodds and Kathy Harrington, they still make fun of me over that swim because I was so bad that day. But I got it done. I did get it done, but it was by far the hardest.
So now you've done all the Triple Crowns possible, and your mind turns to the South American Triple Crown.
All the Triple Crowns.
What? How? Why? I mean, why South America? How did you even know about it?
Actually, I knew about it because of Steve. I mean, Steve's publication. I can't remember who it was, but Steve did an article about. I think it was Blum. An article about somebody who had done the swim from Colonia to Rio de Plata, or across the Rio de Plata to La Plata, and it started calling my name. I mean, the Rio de Plata just started saying, "Anthony, come swim, come swim." And so I went down there in December 2018. I went down there. Matthias Ola and Lucas Rivet were just absolutely great hosts. Did a great job organizing all that kind of stuff. But I went all the way down there, and basically, the short answer is I had a bad day. I mean, we could spend half an hour talking about all the things that went wrong. But about 7.5 hours into the swim, I knew I was in danger. The water was so murky and so dark. I knew if I passed out, I felt like I was going to pass out, that they wouldn't find me. And so I tried to tough it out. I toughed it out probably too long to be safe, but I called the swim at 7.5 hours. So I didn't make it. But it was still calling my name. So I had to go back. But then in the meantime, they formed the Triple Crown of South America. And one of the big legs was Limite ao Pontal in Brazil. I'd been to Brazil in the 80s, and I just absolutely loved it. It was just, I loved the people down there. I loved the feel. I loved the environment. I just loved everything about it. I was like, well, I have to do that swim. And the Rio de Plata is still calling my name. So Beagle's the third leg, and that'll probably be, assuming I get to that one, that'll probably be the coldest swim that I ever do when I do it. It'll be colder than anything I've done. The coldest water I've ever swam in was 2 miles in an aquatic park when I was 19 years old, and it was 47 degrees. So I really have to toughen up to do Beagle. I'm sorry, Ned, I think you're muted.
I'm going to change the subject on you in a minute, but before I do that,
Yeah.
Just an observation. 20 years ago, it was common language among swimmers that they would swim, they'd die before they got out. It was a kind of common language. Thankfully, that common language kind of has disappeared, and I would applaud you for self-diagnosing. When you are swimming and you know you're in trouble, your stroke rate's gone, hopefully by that time your crew has already spotted it and they're getting ready to either adjust you or pull you. But for all swimmers out there, you don't have to die swimming. you have to swim to the reasonable extent of your ability. And when it gets to the point where you think you're in trouble, talk to your crew. And when they say, yeah, Anthony, your stroke rate went from 64 to 44 and you can't remember your name, it's time to get out. You go, what?
Right.
Out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, if you allow me to dive into that a little bit, I'm still not sure exactly what happened. I knew it was going to be a hot, sunny day. The water was going to be about 70. So both those things had me concerned about dehydration, based on my past history. So I had chug-a-lugged a ton of water. So I think I wiped out my electrolytes. The other thing is I had 3 bad nights sleep in a row. I'd taken the red eye down there, out too late the night before, not, partying or anything, just, logistics and just all that kind of stuff. And then had to get up early the next day to go catch the ferry from Buenos Aires over to Uruguay. And then the night of the swim started at 4 a.m. So, I had to get up around 2, but through, clearing customs and all that kind of stuff. Didn't get to bed till 11. So all those things I just was feeling horrible. And so in the first feed, I was going about the right distance. And then even by the second feed, I was already feeling a little woozy, a little out of it. And then my distance per feed was dropping way below my average. And it was just obvious that something was wrong just based on that alone. But, I don't have a fast stroke rate, so it's really hard for my crew to tell when something's going wrong. It's more about the difference of what's going on under the water for me than what you see above the water. My stroke rate's around 55, 56 per minute. So that's a slow stroke rate compared to most of you guys. But it's all what's going on under the water, and I just wasn't getting a catch. And then right around 6 hours, I'd been feeling, how sometimes you get the flu, and you feel like your head's over here and your body's over here, and neither one of them belong to you. I've been feeling like that for hours. And then right around hour 6, everything started getting big giant floaters, and I started seeing black and that kind of stuff, big black spots. And I foolishly swam another hour and a half after that. But, most of those symptoms, my crew couldn't see, Ned, right? Most of those symptoms were just me and what I was experiencing. And so, I think you're right. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm old, but I have 2 little kids. I've got other older kids as well. And, it's, no swim is worth my kids growing up without a dad. So, anyways, I didn't mean to be so long-winded on that.
Right. No, that's good stuff. I want to change the subject and talk about your professional career. You do performance management, you do motivational speaking. Talk to me about how you use these experiences. Oh, by the way, the heat in Key West is a real rookie mistake, by the way. Hopefully that's part of your motivational speaking.
I know it was a rookie mistake. I know that now. That's why it's called a rookie mistake.
Absolutely. How do you use these experiences in your business?
Well, so I'll try to make this as fast as I can, but I'm not sure I'm really going to be able to. But really, I was a healthcare IT professional, healthcare information technology professional for 35 years. That's what I did. I was a senior guy at a Global 50 company. I was the CEO of a small company. I had to pivot a couple of times before it found its way, and it was bought by a different Global 100 company. So that's what I was all about. And when the company got bought, there was an 18-month transition period where I had to stay with the company and help with the transition. Well, during that time, I'm trying to decide, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do? Should I go buy something? Should I go work for somebody else? Should I go, whatever? What should I go do next? But also during that time, right, I was trying to figure out how to give back to the sport, because it's really important to give back to marathon swimming. And I can't give back the way most people give back. This is going to sound absolutely crazy to you, but I can spend 13 hours in the ocean and I'm fine. I spend 13 minutes on a boat and I'm blowing chunks. I just get terribly seasick. So I can't give back in the traditional way. So one day, one of my coach friends, age group swimming coach friends, reached out and said, hey, you know what? Why don't you come talk to my swim team about marathon swimming and just kind of what you've learned about marathon swimming. And so I did that. And then it turned into another swim team, to another swim team, to another swim team. In the meantime, I'm still working for this Japanese firm doing the transition period. And then a buddy of mine is the CFO for Siemens Financial Services in the US. And he's like, hey, why don't you come do our US kickoff? be our keynote speaker? And I'm like, no, there's no chance, right? I have a fear of public speaking. I had no desire to be a public speaker at all. And it's one thing to go talk to a bunch of swim team kids about something related to swimming and go put yourself up in front of 300 business professionals as a keynote speaker. But anyhow, I ended up being convinced to go to lunch with my friend and 2 other Siemens executives one day, and just literally went through the PowerPoint that I'd just done with a swim team a couple of weeks before. And at the end of lunch, I thought I'd be done, get my friend off my back and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of lunch, they just said, how much do we have to pay you to come give that same talk? And I said nothing because it's going to bomb. So I ended up flying to Chicago. It was my very last week with the Japanese firm. I flew to Chicago, did the presentation. It was supposed to be 45 minutes and a 15-minute Q&A. The Q&A ran double. The moderator finally had to cut it off. I'm trying to leave, and people are stopping me in the aisle and asking questions and all that kind of stuff. So I finally get out to the car, and I'm like, oh, I guess it didn't bomb. You know, if people are engaged, it didn't bomb. But then halfway back to O'Hare, the phone rings, and it turned out the global CFO of financial services had come over to the U.S. for the U.S. kickoff, had seen it, and said, Anthony, you know what? I love that talk. Will you come to Munich in 2 weeks and do the same presentation? And then it just took off from there. What happened is my business network heard that I was doing these talks and people were calling me, you know, all that. Because I started doing more and more talks. And I was still trying to decide what I was going to do next, because I was charging for this now because these are businesses, but I still didn't have in my mind I was a keynote speaker type. But what happens with the keynotes is everyone's a little bit different. I really tailor each one of those keynotes for the audience. So I go in, I talk to the companies ahead of time, what's going on in their business, what's happening in their business, what's the most important, what's their competition doing, what's their 5-range role, what are the core messages, you know, basic things, but a lot of things that people don't spend the time to talk about because they're important, but they're not always urgent, so people don't get to them. And then a couple of companies started saying, hey, Anthony, what's it going to take to keep talking to you? I really like these conversations. I want to talk to you beyond the keynote. And so I just said, I don't know, give me some equity. I don't know, pay me, whatever. And then I realized, this is how dopey I am, as much as you think the Key West swim was a mistake, right? Or a rookie mistake, this was too. It took me about 6 months to realize, wait a second, this is the next thing. I've got 4 clients that are paying me for my services to come in and advise them and help them and coach them. I've got this other stuff going on. It's just like, this is the business. And so that's what it's all about, that's how it happened. And so really in the speaking, Ned, the main keynote presentation, it's about swimming. It's about swimming the English Channel, but that's not really what it's about. What it's about is achieving my boyhood dream, right? The swimming is just a metaphor. And so what I think I do a decent job of is using swimming as a metaphor, and swimming was my dream. And then I present to the audience different ways to achieve their dream, whatever their dream is. So it's not a story about me getting up there and saying, hey, I'm wonderful, live life, you know, like me, and your life will be great. It's taking experiences to get my dream done, accomplished, and applying it to their dreams. And then in the business world, you know, in the coaching world, which is the primary business, the keynote stuff I do every once in a while, but the core business is really coaching businesses and coaching executives. But it's a lot like swim coaching, right, Ned? I mean, just in swimming, and I know you have a perfect stroke, and Steve has a perfect stroke, but and so there's an infinite number of things to always work on. That's why we have kickboards and paddles and, you know, all these other things. There's always things to work on. There's an infinite number of things that could get improvement, at least in my stroke. But, you know, a really good coach in swimming doesn't just say, you know, lift your hips up. A really good coach in swimming can see the most important thing and tell you what to do first, what the number one priority is. So, for example, right, if your hips are down, the coach might say, you need to lower your head, you need to drop your head. Or the coach might say, oh, wait a second, your ankles are bent, you're folded up your ankles. You need to work on flexibility in your ankles. And that's the key for that swimmer, right? What's important for me to improve is different than somebody else to improve in a different way. And a good coach can do that. I think the firm, our company is really good at going into businesses and finding the most important thing to impact the business. Because in a business, things are, there's an infinite number of things to work on, and finding the most important things first to work on is the most important thing. So we don't come in and sell like a package. We don't come in and say, oh, do this and this fixes everything. We come in and help figure out what that thing is, and then we go help fix that thing. And because there's so many things to work on in every business, we go find the next thing after that and the next thing after that. So our coaching relationships are long-term relationships. And there's a lot of trust built during that time because we do the things the way we do.
Several people have suggested to me that you bagged those first 2 English Channel swims just to help your future business career. Get that sort of, if you fail, you need to get up and keep trying kind of stuff. Any truth to that now?
I will tell you what, this is where it goes back to the earlier thing that I said. It took me years to figure it out, but failing on my first English Channel swim, man, I couldn't sleep for a month. I was so upset. Whether you believe in God or the cosmos or Mother Nature or whatever, I was just frustrated, right? I could not sleep more than 2 hours at a time. I'd wake up in a sweat. I was just so frustrated. Why did this happen? I was ready. I was prepared, all this kind of stuff. And so for a long, long time, I thought it was one of the worst days of my life. And then what ended up happening is it ended up being one of the best days of my life, because you're absolutely right. What happened out of that is I learned so many lessons. It made me think about so many things. I upped my game in swimming. I took my business experience, applied it into my swimming world. I took my swimming lessons and applied it into my business world, and really created a lot of formulas that help with performance across anything, business, swimming, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is that's important to you. So it has ended up being one of the best days of my life. And I'm actually very grateful that I failed that day. And it has helped my swimming. I tell you, my team became my crew became a team after the English Channel thing, because I handled things so differently after that we really got ourselves together. And we did, anyway, so yes, you're right. It worked out. I'm shocked that anybody thinks that I staged so much. But it really did work out to be one of the best days of my life. And it just goes to show that anyway, I'm not sure exactly what it shows, but I'm very grateful that I actually failed, as bizarre as that sounds.
One of our previous swimmers, Charlotte Bryn, didn't finish her first English Channel, her first Manhattan, and her first Catalina. And she went back and has completed 2 of the 3 and hasn't forgotten about the 3rd one. And she said something like, there's no such thing as a DNF. Steve, you might pop in here, because she said something, there's only a DNFY or something, did not finish yet, or something like that.
Do not fear failure.
DNFF.
Yes, do not fear
do not
failure.
Fear failure. And it was an absolute classic line. And having failed the English Channel the first time myself, people ask me about it. I say, I was actually more proud of going back than I was of finishing the second time, because depending on where your head is, it can knock you back a lot not to finish one of those things, and it makes you look inside yourself quite a bit. So Anthony, I presume I don't have to ask you what's next. I presume there's a couple of remaining bits of a crown in South America that are waiting for you.
Well, the coronavirus has obviously knocked the schedule off, so I don't have a schedule right now. But you're right, Red the Plot is still calling my name.
Listen, thank you very much for your time today.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Take care.
Thanks, Steve.